Welcome back. This week in Chicago, 3 police officers were indicted by a grand jury over the death of a black teenager. Dashcam videos from 2 years ago recorded the moment Laquan McDonald was walking away from police and then shot 16 times. The officer who pulled the trigger is currently on trial for murder, but the 3 officers indicted face questions of a cover-up that include conspiracy, official misconduct, and obstruction of justice. There's a new book that deals with police brutality called Chokehold, Policing Black Men, and it argues that there has never been peace between black people and the police. Paul Butler wrote the book, and he joins me now. He's a professor at the Georgetown University Law Center, a former federal prosecutor, and now an MSNBC contributor. Paul, let me start with, I looked and read most of your book on my way down to New Orleans. Very good book. Now, you grew up in law, aspiring a legal career that took you in the prosecutor's office. I grew up in the civil rights movement, more post-King civil rights movement, where policing has been a dominant issue in our involvement. So we approach these issues from 2 sides, but end up in the same place. And that is, there is this seemingly unending battle between how we get police and the black community and even other communities of color on the same page. And you offer some remedies for that in this book.
I do, Reverend. So I went into the prosecutor's office as an undercover brother. Growing up, a young black man in Chicago, had so many unpleasant experiences with the cops. And then even when I became a prosecutor, I was still a black man, which means I got stopped and frisked and even got arrested for a crime that I didn't commit. I had skills.
Even as a prosecutor?
As a prosecutor working at the Department of Justice. And here's the thing, Reverend, I had skills. I had legal skills. I had standing. I had enough money to hire the best lawyer in town. So I went to trial, got acquitted in less than 5 minutes. One of my favorite chapters in this book, Chokehold, is a how-to guide for brothers, African-American men who are in the criminal justice system. I beat my case, and I want other folks to know how you do it, because the system is biased against us. When folks say that police and prosecutors are out to get African-American men, Reverend, that's the truth.
All right, well, let's stop right there, because we have thousands of people watching this morning. Many of them not black. Many of them have no idea of that kind of life. We're approaching the birthday of this nation. So they expect maybe civil rights guys like Al Sharpton are saying this, but you were a federal prosecutor, and you're saying that that did not give you a pass at all, and this is a way of life for blacks. How do you make people that are white and have never lived under that existence, that are not anti-black, not bigots at all, they just don't get it? How do you make them understand that, Paul?
You break it down, Reverend. You tell them the truth, which is that a white woman has a much better threat of being a victim of violence from a white person, especially a white man. 1 in 5 chance of being raped by a white person. Less than 1 in 500 chance of being the victim of a violent crime by an African American. You know, folks are scared of us, Reverend. We make people anxious. And Chokehold, I look at all these studies that show that literally there's a physical reaction that white folks have when they see an unfamiliar black male face. But, you know, I think people, it's not about racism, it's about not understanding us. Another fact I talk about in the book, most white people have 1 black friend. So if the only exposure you have to brothers is seeing us on the daily news, no wonder you're scared of us.
Now, you know, one of the things that is so frustrating to me, we've been able to make some movement during the Obama years, and you know, I've been involved in a lot of that and a lot of these issues, from Eric Garner's case in New York, working with his family, which Chokehold certainly symbolizes, and on and on and on. Ferguson and all was on the front lines. But I'm looking today, the data shows there was as many police shootings this year, first 6 months as it was the last 2 years. So even as we move forward, we're moving backwards. And now you have an attorney general saying that the moves that Attorney General Loretta Lynch and Attorney General Eric Holder started moving in this area in terms of consent decrees and cameras on police. He's saying, oh, no, we're not going to move forward on that. In fact, we're going to reverse that.
An attorney general who did not read the Justice Department's Ferguson report. He just wasn't that interested. An attorney general who wants to bring back the failed war on drugs. And Reverend, as you say, who wants to stop looking at police departments. President Trump says he wants to bring back stop and frisk, which already is the law in many jurisdictions. Folks know that a judge in New York said the way that the NYPD was doing it was unconstitutional. Reverend, Chicago, Baltimore, Los Angeles, the police are all about stop and frisk. And what we know is that doesn't make communities safer. The reason why we have these results like Laquan McDonald, officer going on trial, chances are he's not going to be convicted. When you look at what happens in these cases, when the rare times that they actually are prosecuted and brought to trial, often there's a not guilty. So in Choco, I have a couple of suggestions for ways to make the police better. Startling suggestions. Half of cops should be women. Women officers are much less likely to shoot people than African Americans. They're very good at public safety, very good at working things out, but not as trigger happy as a lot of cops. Also, if cops have college degrees, they're much less likely to shoot unarmed people. So there are things that we can do that will make our community safer and help African Americans have better outcomes. But as you know, Reverend, President Trump, he's not about those methods. He's about stop and frisk, which we know doesn't work.
Well, that's why we're going to have to keep the pressure on, not because we just like keeping pressure on, but because our communities cannot continue to operate like this. Thank you so much, Paul. Great book, by the way, and I don't endorse books, but it's a great book.
I appreciate that.
And the book is Chokehold by Paul Butler. Coming up, outspoken mayor of New Orleans, Mitch Landrieu, his thoughts on why the new health care plan is bad for the poor and how to improve race relations in this country. Mayor Landrieu with Al Sharpton. We'll be right back.